How do you rebuild when your ex-wife takes your ranch, your company, and even your dog, and you end up driving Uber at 33? What would you do if returning a lost purse led to a stranger calling your father's name and saying he owned most of the company you thought you lost? Why did one sentence from an assistant make me question my last name, my childhood, and my divorce all at once? My name is Cole Rains. I am 33 years old, and I live in a small studio apartment on the north side of Houston. The place has one window, one narrow closet, and a kitchen area that feels like a hallway. I keep it clean because order is the only thing I can fully control right now. Most nights I eat the same food, take a quick shower, and fall asleep on a couch that folds out into a bed. The silence is loud here. It is not the kind of silence you choose. It is the kind of silence you get after someone has taken your life and walked away. A year ago, I had a different address. I had land in Texas, wide open, with a gate and long fences and a dirt road that made a soft sound under tires. I had a trucking company with drivers who trusted me and clients who paid on time because I kept my word. I had a big dog who followed me around the ranch like I was the center of his world. I had a marriage that I thought was steady. I do not talk about it with emotion, because emotion does not change anything. Facts change things. And the facts were simple. My ex-wife Tara got the ranch. Tara got control of the company. Tara got the dog. I got what was left, which was mostly paperwork and empty space. After the divorce, Tara did not just take assets. She took the story. In public, she acted like she had been carrying me the whole time. She posted photos like she built everything by herself. She used words like fresh start and new chapter. People nodded and believed her because she looked confident. I looked tired. And when I tried to correct something, she used the same calm tone, like she was explaining to a child. She told people I was struggling. She told people I needed time. She made it sound gentle, like concern, but it was control. Some days she did not speak to me at all. Other days she sent messages that had a sharp edge. One afternoon, while I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store, my phone buzzed. It was Tara. She wrote that I would never recover. She added that I should accept reality and stop pretending. She did not ask how I was eating or sleeping. She did not ask where I was living. She did not ask about the dog. She only wanted me to feel small. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I locked my phone and put it face down. I did not reply. I have learned that some people want a reaction more than they want a solution. The truth is, I had already accepted reality. I just did not accept her version of it. I accepted that I had bills and no company income. I accepted that I had to work. I accepted that I could not sit in a corner and wait for life to return, so I drove. I signed up for Uber because it was fast and because it did not require someone's approval. I could start the next day. The car I used was not the truck I loved. That truck was part of the divorce story, too. I drove a plain sedan with a clean interior and a mild air freshener. I vacuumed it often. I kept bottled water in the trunk. I did the job the same way I ran my business before, with quiet professionalism, even if the job looked small from the outside. At night, the city shows you faces people hide in daylight. You see tired nurses, stressed managers, students with big dreams, and couples arguing in low voices. You hear fragments of lives without being part of them. That is one thing I like about driving. I can listen without being pulled in. I can stay calm. I can be invisible. In my old life, I was always visible. People always had their hands out. They always wanted a favor, a discount, a promise. Now I could just drive, follow the map, and go home. On a Thursday night, close to midnight, I got a pickup request from a nice part of downtown. The passenger was a woman around 40, dressed like she had been at a long meeting. Her hair was neat, but her eyes looked tired. She spoke in a polite, focused way. She asked me to take her to an address near the medical district. During the ride, she took a call and spoke in work language, the kind that sounds calm but carries pressure. She mentioned an early meeting and a hotel ballroom. She said something about a presentation and people who liked control. She did not say names, but I could hear the weight of it. When she ended the call, she thanked me for being patient with the short stop she asked for along the way. I told her it was fine. I meant it. I dropped her off and waited for the next request. 10 minutes later, I noticed a purse on the back seat. It was expensive, but I did not think about the brand. I thought about how quickly a simple mistake can become a big problem for someone. I checked the car again, front and back, to make sure nothing else was left. Then I used the app steps for a lost item. I sent the message and waited. The response came in the morning. The passenger thanked me and asked if I could return it that day. She offered to meet near her office downtown. I agreed. I told myself it was just a return, nothing more. I did not want extra contact with people who lived in a world of elevators and glass walls. That world used to be close to mine, but now it felt like someone else's movie. That afternoon, I drove downtown and parked in a garage that charged too much. I carried the purse carefully, like it was evidence. When I reached the lobby, I saw security gates, shiny floors, and people walking fast with lanyards. The lobby had the kind of air that is always cool, like it is made for suits and quiet power. I went to the front desk and explained I was returning a lost purse to a woman who worked there. I said her first name and last name clearly. The security guard looked me up and down in a way that made my stomach tighten. He asked if I had an appointment. I told him I did not, but the woman was expecting me. He told me to wait. He made a call and spoke like I was a delivery issue, not a person. While I waited, people walked past me without looking. I stood near a large plant and kept my face neutral. I have learned that looking upset gives people something to push against. After a few minutes, a young woman came down from the elevators. She wore office clothes and moved with purpose. She was not dressed like security. She looked like an assistant, the kind who knows where every calendar item lives. She approached the desk, glanced at the purse, and then looked at me. At first, her face was normal. Then her eyes narrowed slightly, like she was comparing my face to something in her mind. She stared too long for a stranger in a lobby. I felt the old feeling I used to get in meetings when someone was deciding if I mattered. She asked my name. I told her, calm and simple. She repeated it slowly, like she was checking the sound. Then she asked what my father's name was. The question hit me like cold water. Most people do not ask that in a lobby. I told her I did not know why she needed that. I told her my father was not in my life. I kept my voice steady, even though my chest tightened. She did not apologize. She just looked more certain. She stepped closer, lowered her voice, and spoke in a careful way, like she was afraid of being overheard. She said that my face matched a photo in an old file. She said the name in that file was James Holloway. I told her I had never heard that name. I told her it did not make sense. She swallowed hard, and her hands pressed against the edge of the desk for balance, like the floor moved under her for a second. She glanced toward the elevators, then toward the security guard, then back to me. Her eyes were wide, but she was trying to look professional. She said she could not explain everything in the lobby. She said that James Holloway had worked there decades ago, and people still remembered the name because it was tied to ownership. She said it in a plain way, not dramatic, but the words felt unreal. I stood still and listened, because reacting would not help me understand. My mind started searching for any memory of that name in my childhood. There was nothing. I handed her the purse and told her I was just returning it. She thanked me quickly, but her attention stayed on my face like she was seeing a problem she could not unsee. She asked if I could wait a moment. I told her I could not wait long because I had work. That was true, but also my legs felt weak in a way I did not like. The lobby suddenly felt smaller, like the glass walls were closing in. She leaned in again and said one more thing in that same careful tone. She said that James Holloway was no longer around and that he had owned 75% of the company. Then she added that the reason I never heard his name was not an accident. She said it like a fact, not an opinion. She did not tell me the reason. She just looked at me like she was sorry and scared at the same time, as if she had opened a door and could not close it again. The next hour after that lobby felt unreal. I walked out into the sun and stood on the sidewalk like I had forgotten how to move. Downtown traffic sounded the same, people still crossed the street, and nobody cared what just happened to me. I got back into my car and sat with both hands on the wheel. I kept replaying the assistant's face and the way she swallowed before she spoke. I was not thinking about money yet. I was thinking about identity. I was thinking about how a stranger could look at me and see a name I had never heard. I drove to a coffee shop across from the tower because I did not want to go home with that feeling in my chest. I ordered something simple and sat at a small table near the window. I pulled out a cheap notebook I kept for mileage and gas notes. I turned to a blank page and wrote down the name James Holloway. I wrote the year she mentioned. I wrote 75%. Then I stared at the page until my eyes went dry. I tried to connect that name to my childhood. I could not. The man who raised me was the man I called my father, even if he was not there much. I knew his first name. I knew his last name. I knew the kind of truck he drove and the smell of his work boots. I knew the way my mother would go quiet when the topic came up. I knew how she would change the subject and say we should focus on the present. I had accepted that I came from a messy place and that it was better not to dig. Now a stranger had handed me a shovel. While I sat there, my mind drifted back to the life I lost, because that part at least felt familiar. I did not build my company overnight. I started with one used truck and a small route. I did dispatch calls myself. I learned which clients paid late and which ones paid early. I learned which drivers needed clear rules and which ones needed patience. I paid for repairs before things broke, because I did not like emergencies. I kept everything organized. I did not get rich fast, but I grew steady, and steady growth gives you confidence that feels real. Tara entered my life when things were already moving upward. I met her at a local charity event a client invited me to. I wore a plain button-up shirt and clean boots. Tara looked like she belonged there. She had a bright smile that reached people easily. She asked what I did, and when I told her, she acted impressed in a way that felt warm. She said she liked men who built things. She said she liked stability. At the time, those words sounded like respect. In the beginning, Tara listened. She asked about my routes, my drivers, my goals. She came with me on weekend drives and acted interested when I pointed out new land listings. When I bought the ranch, she told me it was proof that hard work mattered. She posted a photo of us at the gate and wrote something about building a future. My friends liked it. Her friends commented with heart emojis. That public support felt good, and I did not question it. After we married, Tara's interest shifted. It became less about the work and more about what the work could provide for her. She started calling the ranch our brand. She started talking about the company like it was a platform. She wanted me to go to more events, wear more expensive clothes, and smile for photos even when I was exhausted. When I said I needed to sleep because I had early pickups, she said I was acting small. She said people with real success showed up. She said I was too serious. I kept telling myself this was normal. I told myself marriage was compromise. I told myself she was helping me expand. That is the story I used to protect my pride. The first clear shift happened at a dinner with 2 clients and their spouses. We were in a nice restaurant, the kind with low lighting and white napkins. The clients asked me about fleet expansion. I answered calmly and explained my plan. Tara interrupted, smiling, and said I could be stubborn and slow. She said I needed someone to push me. Everyone laughed lightly, like it was harmless. I smiled too, because I did not want to make it awkward, but something in me cooled. I realized she had corrected me in public for no reason other than control. After that, it became a pattern. If I spoke about work, she added comments about my personality, like she was my manager. If I disagreed with her on something small, she would wait until we were around people and then bring it up with a joke. She never raised her voice. She never looked angry. That was part of the problem. She could make me look unreasonable without doing anything obvious. When I started spending more time on the ranch, Tara complained that I was hiding out there. She said I was avoiding real life. I told her the ranch was real life to me. I told her it was peace. She said peace was a word men used when they did not want to grow. Then Logan appeared. I did not meet Logan first. Tara did. She started going to a high-end gym in the city and said she wanted to feel strong and confident. I supported it. I paid the membership. I did not question her schedule because I did not want to be controlling. After a month, she mentioned a new friend. After 2 months, she started saying Logan gave good advice about business and branding. She said he understood modern growth. She said I should listen to him. When I finally met him, it was at a casual gathering with Tara's friends. Logan was loud in a polished way. He told stories about sales wins and connections. He shook my hand too firmly and kept eye contact too long. He asked questions about my company like he was testing for weaknesses. When I answered, he smiled like he already knew better. Tara watched him with attention I had not seen in a long time. Later that night, when we were alone, Tara said Logan was the kind of person who could help us take things to the next level. She said I had built a solid base, but I lacked vision. She said I should be grateful someone like him wanted to be involved. I did not like it, but I did not fight. I told myself it was just networking. I told myself it was her trying to be helpful. I kept choosing calm because I believed calm was strength. Then the humiliations became sharper. At the ranch, Tara started making decisions without me. She hired a social media person to tell our story and did not ask my opinion. She ordered new furniture and said the old stuff looked too plain. She began planning events on the property without checking my schedule. When I said the ranch was not a party venue, she told me I was being difficult. She said the ranch was wasted on me. At the trucking company, she started showing up more. She said she wanted to learn the business. I welcomed it at first. Then she started giving instructions to my office staff. She asked for access to accounts. She said it was normal for spouses to share everything. When I hesitated, she said I did not trust her. She said I was making her feel like an outsider in her own life. I gave her access because I did not want constant arguments. I told myself transparency was healthy. I did not understand that I was handing someone the keys to my own house while they were planning to lock me out. A few months later, I noticed small changes. Some invoices were handled differently. Some vendors were switched without my knowledge. One driver told me Tara asked him questions about my habits, like what time I left the yard and which days I stayed late. The driver said it felt strange, but he did not want to cause trouble. I thanked him and told him not to worry. I did not want to sound paranoid. The day the divorce started, it did not look like a fight. It looked like a meeting. Tara asked me to sit down at the kitchen table. She placed a neat stack of papers in front of me and said it was best for both of us. She said she had been unhappy for a long time. She said I was emotionally absent. She said I cared more about trucks than people. She said she needed a partner who could match her energy. She delivered it like a prepared statement. I listened and kept my face calm. I asked if she was sure. She said she was sure. Logan was not in the room, but his presence was there anyway, like a shadow. Within days, he was around openly. Tara did not hide it. She acted like she had moved on to something better, and I should accept it. During the divorce process, Tara pushed hard on assets. She said she deserved the ranch because she turned it into a public success. She said she deserved control of the company because she improved operations. She said the dog was more attached to her, and she said it would be cruel to take him away. I kept reminding myself to stay calm and stick to facts, but the facts were getting buried under stories. I made one mistake. I thought fairness would be enough. I thought that if I behaved reasonably, the outcome would be reasonable. I did not realize the outcome had been decided before the papers reached my table. After the divorce was final, I went to the ranch once to collect some personal items. Tara was there with Logan. They stood together near the front porch like they owned the air. Tara spoke politely and told me to be quick. Logan watched me with a smile that did not feel friendly. At one point, he said I should move on and accept that I was not built for that life. He said I was too soft for big money and big decisions. Tara did not correct him. She just watched to see what I would do. I did nothing. I packed what I could, loaded my car, and left. The dog stood near Tara and did not follow me. That part hurt more than I expected, but I did not show it. In the months that followed, Tara kept reaching out in small ways, not to help, but to remind me she was still above me. She sent messages about paperwork like she was my supervisor. She asked questions about minor items like she was doing me a favor. She posted photos from the ranch with the dog in the frame. She wanted me to see it. She wanted me to feel replaced. And now, sitting in that coffee shop, the assistant's words made those months look different, not softer, more calculated. If my father's name was tied to that company, then my whole story had missing pages. If people knew that name and I did not, then someone had decided I should not know it. And if someone had decided that, then my divorce and my business loss might not have been separate problems. They might have been one problem with two fronts. I finished my coffee without tasting it. I drove 2 more short rides that afternoon, but my mind was not on the map. I kept seeing the assistant's face and the way her eyes moved toward the elevators like she expected trouble. When my shift ended, I sat in my car in a quiet parking lot and opened my phone again. I stared at Tara's last message. The words about me never recovering did not feel like a normal breakup message anymore. It felt like a warning. That night, I barely slept. I kept running through basic questions I should have asked years ago. Who was James Holloway? Why did that assistant know the name? Why did she look scared? Why did she say I never heard the name on purpose? I did not have answers, but I did have a habit from my old business life. When things do not make sense, you stop guessing and start collecting facts. The next morning, I went to a bank branch in Midtown. I chose that branch because it was near my old office and I knew it handled business accounts. I did not walk in acting angry. I did not demand anything. I asked to speak to someone about past accounts connected to my old company and to my name. The teller smiled politely, then called a manager. The manager sat with me in a small room with a glass wall. He talked in a careful tone, the kind people use when they want to sound helpful while saying no. He told me he could not discuss certain things without proper access. He said policies were strict. He said I could submit requests through proper channels. I nodded and told him I understood. I asked one simple question, whether there had ever been accounts connected to a trust or legacy ownership tied to the name Holloway. The manager's eyes changed for half a second, like the word hit something in his memory. He did not answer directly. He said he would need more information to even check. That was enough for me. I did not need him to confirm it. I needed to see that the name was real in systems, not just in an assistant's mouth. I thanked him, took the card he offered, and left. Outside the bank, I sat in my car and wrote the manager's name in my notebook. I wrote the branch address, I wrote the date and time, I wrote my question and the way his eyes shifted. It may sound small, but small reactions are often the first proof you are not imagining things. Later that day, I drove back downtown. I told myself I was only going to drop off a thank you note for the assistant. That was my excuse, even to myself. The truth was, I needed to see her again. I needed to confirm I did not misunderstand her. The lobby looked the same cool air, the same shiny floor, the same people walking fast like the building belonged to them. I approached the front desk, and the same security guard was there. This time he recognized me. He did not smile. He asked why I was back. I told him I was returning to thank the assistant who helped me. He said I could not go up without an appointment. I waited near the same large plant. After a few minutes, the assistant came down, but she did not walk straight to me like before. She stopped near the elevators and looked around first. Then she walked toward me with controlled steps. Her face was composed, but her eyes were tense. I told her I wanted to thank her for handling the purse and that I had a question. I asked her what she meant about that name. She did not answer in the lobby. She said she could not talk there. She told me to walk with her toward the side hallway near the building's cafe area, where the camera angle was not as direct and the foot traffic was lighter. When we stopped, she kept her voice low. She said she should not have said anything the day before. She said the company had a long memory and certain names made people nervous. She said there were old stories about a man who helped build the place and then disappeared from the narrative. She said the photo she remembered was from an internal archive, not a public display. I asked her why she thought the photo was connected to me. She told me my face shape and eyes matched, and the last name on the file was not mine. She said the file had a note about family, but she did not know details. She said she was not allowed to access everything, and she did not want to lose her job. I told her I understood. I did not push her for more than she could give. Then I asked her the question that mattered most. I asked if she was sure the ownership number was real. She did not hesitate this time. She said it was real in the historical record. She said it came up during a training session for assistants, because assistants were told never to mention it. She said the company wanted a clean story, and that name made the story complicated. I asked her what she meant by no longer around. She looked away and said she did not know the full situation. She said people talked about it like a closed chapter. She said it was a sensitive topic. She said she did not want to speculate. Her careful words told me enough. Whatever happened, it was not something people spoke about freely. I asked her the last question. I asked why she said I never heard the name on purpose. She swallowed again, the same way she did before. She said there were notes in the archive about a protected identity and reassignment of records. She said she did not know what that meant in detail, but she knew it was not random. She said someone had worked hard to keep the name out of public conversation. Then she stepped back, like she had already said too much. I thanked her. I told her I would not mention her name to anyone. I meant it. Whatever this was, she was a small person in a big machine, and she looked like someone who had learned how machines work. As I turned to leave, I noticed the security guard watching us. His gaze was steady. It made me feel like I had a target on my back. I walked out with my shoulders relaxed and my face neutral, like I did not care. Inside, my thoughts were racing. I sat in my car and opened a blank page in my notebook. I wrote 2 columns. On one side, I wrote what I know. On the other, I wrote what I need. Under what I know, I wrote that the name James Holloway was tied to old ownership. I wrote that the number 75% existed in internal memory. I wrote that there were notes about protected identity and reassignment. Under what I need, I wrote records, dates, and a clear chain. Then I drove to my storage unit. The storage unit was not far from the beltway. The air inside always smelled like dust and old cardboard. The overhead light flickered slightly, like it was tired. I rolled up the door and stared at my stacked boxes. I had not come here in months because it felt like visiting a graveyard of my old life. I had thrown things in here during the divorce because I did not know what to do with them. I had promised myself I would sort it later. Later had arrived. I opened boxes slowly. I did not dump everything out. I did not panic. I made small piles on the floor. 1 pile for old business items, 1 pile for personal items, 1 pile for legal mail I could not face. I found ranch photos, old tax packets, and employee holiday cards. I found a collar for my dog, and I held it for a moment longer than I should have. Then I set it down and kept going. In a box marked Old Mail, I found envelopes from years ago. Most were normal. Bills, statements, holiday cards. Then I found a few that made my stomach tighten. They were addressed to my mother, but the return address was a law office I did not recognize. One envelope had a stamp that said it was returned. Another had a forwarding label placed over a different name. The name under the label was not fully visible, but the first letters looked like Hall. I sat back on my heels and stared at that partial name. My hands felt cold. It was not proof by itself, but it was a crack in the wall. A wall I had never questioned. I kept searching and found a thin folder inside an old binder. It had papers my mother must have kept separate from everything else. I did not read them in full right away. I just looked at the top pages and saw terms that felt formal, like they were written by professionals. I saw dates that did not match stories I had been told. I saw a signature line that was not my mother's handwriting. I did not flip out. I did not shout. I just sat very still and let my mind settle into a new shape. That was the moment the switch flipped for me. It was not a dramatic moment. There was no pounding heart scene. There was just clarity. My life had a missing section, and my divorce had happened too smoothly for someone who truly loved me once. I had been calm for years because I believed calm would earn respect. Now I understood something different. Calm was still useful, but not for earning respect. Calm was useful for building a case. I went back to my car and drove to an office supply store. I bought a pack of folders, a cheap label maker, and a small USB drive. Back at my apartment, I cleared my tiny table and set up a simple system. I made a folder labeled Timeline. I made another labeled Messages. I made another labeled Records. I did not put anything complicated in them yet. I just made space. That night, Tara posted a photo from the ranch. The dog was in the background, lying in the shade like he belonged there forever. The caption was about peace and growth. I did not react. I did not respond. I saved the post. Then I opened my calendar app and searched for the meeting the passenger mentioned during the ride. I could not see internal company calendars, but I could see public event listings and hotel schedules. I found a note about an annual shareholder gathering at a hotel conference center in a few weeks. It might have been routine, but the timing felt like a door opening. I wrote the date on my paper calendar and circled it in red. I did not know exactly what I would do yet. I only knew I would handle it properly. I would do it through the systems people like Tara respected. I would not argue in text messages. I would not beg. I would not chase. I would collect facts, line them up, and let the truth speak in the right room at the right time. The next week, I kept my routine steady on purpose. I drove mornings and nights. I cleaned my car between shifts. I ate simple food and saved every receipt. On the outside, I looked like a man who had accepted his new life. That was useful. People pay less attention to a person they think is finished. Inside, I was building a system. I started with public records because public records do not care about feelings. They care about names, dates, and filing numbers. On my first free morning, I drove to the county clerk annex. The building was plain, with faded signs and rows of plastic chairs. It smelled like paper and old air conditioning. I took a number from a small machine and waited while people around me held folders and stared at their phones. When my number was called, I walked to the counter and asked for guidance, not favors. I told the clerk I needed to request older filings connected to a company name and a few names connected to it. I kept my tone calm and respectful. The clerk explained what could be requested, what required identity verification, and what would take time. I wrote down the steps like I was learning a new route for a new client. I filled out forms, paid small fees, and got printed receipts with reference numbers. I did not get answers that day. That was fine. The point was to start the paper trail the right way. When I left, I sat in my car and added the new numbers to my notebook. I wrote the date, the time, and the clerk's instructions. I was not chasing a rumor anymore. I was following procedure. Later that afternoon, I drove past my old trucking yard. I did not go in. I did not want a scene. I parked across the street where I could see the gate and the yard without being obvious. A few trucks rolled out, lined up like they always did, but the logo on the doors was not mine. The sight hit me in a quiet place. I used to know every driver by name. Now I was a stranger watching my own past from a distance. While I sat there, I watched the office door open and close. I saw a man I recognized, one of the dispatchers I used to trust, step outside with a coffee cup. His name was Wade Turner. He looked older than I remembered, like stress had pulled his shoulders down. When he noticed my car, his face tightened, then softened. He walked across the street slowly, like he was making sure it was really me. Wade asked how I was doing. I told him I was working and keeping busy. He looked around before speaking, like the yard had ears. He told me things had changed fast after the divorce. He said Tara and Logan came in with big confidence and new rules. He said they talked about efficiency and modern operations. He said a lot of people felt uneasy, but they needed paychecks. I asked Wade if he had noticed anything odd around the time the divorce started. I did not accuse anyone. I just asked what he saw. Wade said Tara began requesting information she never asked for before. He said she wanted lists of contracts, client contacts, and renewal dates. He said Logan sat in meetings with vendors and talked like he was already in charge. Wade said the way they spoke made him feel like the company was being prepared for something, not just managed. I thanked Wade and told him I was not trying to pull him into drama. I told him I only wanted to understand what happened. He nodded and said he was tired of pretending it was normal. Before he walked away, he told me to be careful. He said people with power like to keep their stories clean. He said I was not the only person who felt pushed out. That night, I saved Wade's number with a simple label. I did not text him right away. I did not want a trail that could put him at risk. I only noted what he said in my notebook in plain language, with the date beside it. 2 days later, I went back downtown. I did not go to the tower lobby this time. I parked farther away and walked around the block first, just to steady myself. The last time I was there, the assistant's words made my skin feel too tight. I needed to approach this like a normal task. I went to the cafe area connected to the tower, the one open to the public. It had small tables, a line for coffee, and quiet office chatter. I ordered a drink and sat where I could see the flow of people without staring. I was not there to spy like a movie. I was there to listen to what people said when they assumed nobody important was listening. A group of employees sat nearby with laptops open. They talked about the upcoming annual meeting. They mentioned presentations, seating arrangements, and who would be on stage. One person joked that leadership loved applause more than results. Another said the board was focused on keeping things tidy, especially anything related to legacy ownership. The word legacy came up more than once. Each time, it made my stomach tighten in a familiar way. I kept my face neutral and looked at my phone like I was scrolling. I did not record anything. I did not want to cross lines. I only listened and then wrote a few keywords later, when I was alone. After an hour, I left and sat in my car. I typed a short message to Nina, the assistant, but I did not send it yet. The message was polite. I only asked if she knew the date and location of the annual shareholder meeting. I kept it simple, like I was asking about a public event. I stared at the unsent message for a long time. Then I deleted it. Nina had already risked enough by saying what she said. I did not want to pull her into it further. If this was real, I could find the details without putting her name in a text thread. That evening, I returned to my apartment and spread my folders across the small table. I placed the notebook in the center like it was a map. I made a list of what I could do without permission from anyone. Request public filings, save my own messages. Document what I personally witnessed, maintain a clear timeline, talk to a professional who knew procedure. Every step had to be clean. The next morning, I sat in a law office waiting room. The office was not flashy. It smelled like coffee and printer paper. The chairs were comfortable but plain. The people waiting looked tired and focused. Nobody was there for entertainment. Everyone was there because they needed something the system could provide. I met with a lawyer named Evelyn Park. She was in her mid-40s and spoke in short, calm sentences. She did not act shocked when I explained the situation. She did not lean forward like she wanted gossip. She asked for dates. She asked for names. She asked what I had in writing and what I had only heard. She explained that rumors were not useful in formal settings, but patterns could be useful if supported by records. I told her I did not have the full proof yet. I told her I had a name, a percentage, and signs that records existed. I told her I wanted to do everything properly. Evelyn said that was the only way it would hold. She said I should avoid emotional confrontation. She said the goal was clarity through verified history, not personal arguments. She gave me a list of steps, but she did not hand me anything that looked like a finished plan. She explained the difference between what could be requested and what required formal notice. She explained how identity issues could affect ownership and how that could trigger review. She said my job right now was to keep gathering information in a way that could be used later if needed. I left her office feeling steadier, not hopeful in a childish way, steadier in an adult way. I had been living like my only tool was endurance. Now I understood I had other tools as long as I used them carefully. Over the next few days, Tara kept doing what Tara did. She kept posting photos from the ranch. She kept showing the dog in the frame like a trophy. She wrote captions about protecting peace and moving forward. She did not mention me, but the silence was part of the message. Logan appeared in the background more often, always close, always smiling like he had won something fair. Then Tara sent me another message. This one was about paperwork tied to the company's old client list. She wrote like she was doing me a favor by letting me know. She said I should not contact anyone because it would look desperate. She said people did not like instability. The words were calm, but the intent was control. I did not reply. I saved the message and added it to my folder. I was not collecting to hurt her. I was collecting because patterns matter. If someone wanted to show a story to a room full of serious people, they would use dates and written actions, not feelings. I also kept driving Uber because I needed income, but the driving became useful in another way. Passengers talk. They talk about companies, gossip, office politics, and events. One night, a man in a suit sat in my backseat and spoke on the phone about the upcoming shareholder gathering at the hotel conference center. He said leadership wanted everything to look smooth. He said there were old issues that should never be mentioned on stage. I did not react. I drove carefully and kept my eyes on the road. When I dropped him off, I parked a few blocks away and wrote down the hotel name and the date he mentioned. Then I confirmed it through public listings and event schedules. The meeting was real. It was happening soon. It was not a small internal lunch. It was the kind of gathering where decisions and reputations mattered. By the end of that week, my folders looked simple on the outside, but inside they were organized. I had dates, I had names, I had official request numbers from the clerk's office. I had saved messages. I had a clean timeline written in plain language. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, nothing messy. I went to sleep that night with a strange kind of calm. Tara and Logan thought my life had shrunk to a steering wheel and a phone. They thought that meant I was powerless. They did not understand something basic. A quiet life is not always a weak life. Sometimes it is a life where a person can finally see clearly. The week before the annual meeting, I moved like nothing was happening. I drove my usual hours. I smiled at passengers. I kept my car clean. I kept my voice calm. If anyone looked at me from the outside, they would have seen a man who was still trying to survive. That was fine with me. A man who looks harmless gets left alone. Inside, I was tightening every loose string. I stopped sending any messages that could be misunderstood. I did not ask Nina for more help. I did not mention the name Holloway to anyone in my daily life. I did not talk about Tara or Logan in public. I did not post anything online. I did not want noise. I wanted clean lines. I wanted a simple record. What I requested, what I received, and what I personally witnessed. Every morning, before driving, I sat at my small table and checked my notebook. I reviewed the timeline like it was a route plan. I added new dates as they came in. I wrote down every official reference number I received from the clerk annex. Some items were still pending. Some items were ready to pick up. None of it felt exciting. It felt slow. It felt boring. That is what proper systems look like. They do not move fast just because you are stressed. I kept my folders in a cheap plastic crate by my couch. I labeled them with simple words: timeline, messages, records, notes. I did not show them to anyone. I did not even open them unless I had a reason. I wanted to avoid confusion. If I was tired, I did not dig into details. I only did the work when my mind was clear. That was another lesson from business. Mistakes happen when you rush. Midweek, I met Evelyn Park again. I sat in her office with my notebook and my calm face. She asked if anything new had happened. I told her I had more dates and more official request references. I told her I had saved messages that showed patterns of control. I told her I had confirmed the hotel meeting in multiple ways. I told her I was still driving Uber and keeping a low profile. Evelyn listened and asked careful questions. She did not tell me what to feel. She told me what mattered in formal settings. She told me to keep my language plain and my timeline clean. She told me not to speculate about motives unless there was proof. She also told me that timing mattered. She said people who control rooms do not like surprises, but they respect procedure when it arrives at the right moment. Before I left, Evelyn placed a stack of papers on the desk and turned them so I could sign where needed. She did not explain them in a dramatic way. She explained them in a procedural way. She said it was the right step to take now, before emotions or pressure could change the path. I read each page slowly. I asked questions where I needed to. Then I signed. I kept my hand steady. I did not feel triumph. I felt focus. On the way home, I stopped at a copy shop and printed a few simple items. Nothing that showed a full plan, nothing that looked like a reveal, just basic confirmations and notes I would need to keep myself organized. The printer noise was steady and dull. The paper came out warm. I watched each sheet like I was watching bricks stack into a wall. That night, Tara sent another message. She wrote that she heard I had been around downtown. She wrote that I should not embarrass myself by trying to get attention. She wrote that people had moved on and that I should do the same. She ended it with a line about me being lucky she did not make things worse for me. I read it once. I did not answer. I saved it and put it in the messages folder. Then I set my phone down and made myself dinner. I ate slowly. I washed the plate. I cleaned the counter. Small routine keeps your mind stable. It also keeps you from reacting. The next day, I received a call from Wade. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine. He asked if Tara had been asking questions at the yard again. I told him I did not know. Wade said Logan had been bragging about locking down everything and cleaning up old problems. Wade said the tone felt careless, like they believed nobody could challenge them. I thanked Wade for the information and told him to keep his own position safe. I told him I did not want him pulled into anything. Wade said he understood, but he also said he was tired of watching people act untouchable. I kept that call in my mind, but I did not write it down in a way that could point back to Wade. I only noted the general idea. More confidence from them, more careless talk. When people feel safe, they show you more of their real behavior. 2 nights before the meeting, I drove out toward the ranch area. I did not go to the gate. I did not turn onto the access road. I stayed on the public road and drove slowly. The land looked the same from a distance. The sky was wide. The fences ran like lines drawn by a patient hand. I could almost picture my dog running near the porch, even if I could not see him. I did not do it to feel sad. I did it to close a chapter in my own mind. For a long time, I had been thinking about what I lost as if it was still waiting for me. I needed to accept that it was not waiting. That did not mean I would accept being erased. It only meant I would stop chasing the past like it could be returned by hope alone. Back at my apartment, I laid out what I would wear to the meeting. I chose simple clothes, nothing flashy, nothing that would make people stare. I wanted to look like a normal attendee, not a man looking for attention. I cleaned my shoes, I trimmed my hair, I practiced a calm expression in the mirror, not because I wanted to look brave, but because I wanted to look steady. The morning of the meeting, I woke up early without an alarm. My apartment was quiet. The air felt cool. I made coffee and drank it slowly. I did not scroll my phone. I did not replay old arguments in my head. I checked my folders one last time, only to make sure everything was in the right place. Then I put the crate in the trunk of my car and drove downtown. Traffic moved in waves. I stayed in the right lane and let faster cars pass. My hands did not shake. I was not going there to plead. I was going there to be heard properly, the way grown institutions listen through order and verified history. When I reached the hotel conference center, the parking lot was already filling up. Men and women in business clothes walked toward the entrance in small groups. Some laughed lightly. Some checked their phones. Some carried folders and tablets. It looked like any normal corporate event. That normal look was part of how power protects itself. It makes everything feel routine, even when the stakes are high. I parked and sat for a minute with the engine off. I listened to the quiet inside my car. I felt a familiar thought try to rise, the one that asked if I was doing the right thing. I answered it with a simple fact. I was doing it the proper way. I was not forcing anyone. I was following process. That was the right thing. Inside the lobby, I saw a registration table with name tags. I walked up and gave my name. The person behind the table looked at the list, then looked up at me again. There was a brief pause. Then they handed me a badge without saying much. I clipped it on and walked toward the ballroom hallway. As I approached the open doors, I saw Tara near the front, dressed like the room belonged to her. Logan stood close beside her, scanning the space like he was guarding status. Tara noticed me. Her face held a small smile that did not reach her eyes. She leaned toward Logan and spoke softly to him. He looked at me, then looked away, like I was nothing. I did not react. I did not slow down. I walked past them without stopping and found a seat where I could see the stage and the front tables. I placed my hands on my knees and sat straight. My heart beat at a normal pace. The room lights were bright. The chairs were close together. Voices blended into a steady hum. I looked at the stage and waited, calm and ready, like a man who finally understood that patience is not weakness when you are using it to place the truth in the right room. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly, and the room settled into a practiced quiet. A person at the podium thanked everyone for coming and spoke about growth, stability, and the future. Slides moved on a screen behind the stage. People nodded at the right times. The front table smiled in a way that looked rehearsed. I kept my hands still on my knees and watched the small details. Who leaned toward who checked their phone, who avoided looking at certain rows. Tara sat near the front like she owned the air. Logan stayed close enough to look important, but not close enough to look like staff. They were comfortable. They had no reason not to be. When the speaker shifted to legacy structure and clean governance, I felt the room tighten in a subtle way. Not fear, more like caution. The kind people show when they know a topic has sharp edges. A few minutes later, they opened a short section for questions and shareholder remarks. A staff member walked the aisle with a microphone. People asked soft questions that sounded helpful, not challenging. The answers were smooth. I waited until the routine rhythm was set. Then I stood up. At first, the staff member looked past me like I was not an option. I lifted my badge slightly and said I needed to be recognized. I kept my voice low and even. No anger, no drama. The staff member hesitated, then brought the microphone anyway. The person at the podium squinted toward my row. Someone at the front table leaned toward counsel. I saw a few heads turn. Tara looked back. Her smile stayed on her face, but her eyes hardened. I said my name and stated that I was there on a matter of ownership and identity connected to the company's historical records. I said I understood there were procedures, and I was following them. I said I had counsel and certified records, and I requested that the chair and company counsel receive them before the room formed opinions. I nodded to the aisle and signaled to Evelyn Park, who was seated 2 rows behind me. She stood, walked forward calmly, and handed sealed packets to the chair, to company counsel, and to the corporate secretary at the side table. The packets were thick, labeled, and organized with tabs. No loose pages, no messy stack. The room went quiet in a different way. People were listening now. I spoke in short sentences because long sentences invite interruption. I said the name James Holloway. I said he was recorded as a majority owner in the company's early structure. I said his interest was not a rumor, and it was not a story. It was documented in the company's own historical ledger and in external records. A few people shifted in their chairs when they heard the name. The reaction was small, but it was real. I said I had never been told that name in my life. I said I grew up under a different last name. I said that was not a personal choice, and it was not an accident. I said I had verified records showing that my identity was handled through a protected process when I was a child, and that the paperwork had been structured in a way that kept the Holloway name out of my daily life. I did not accuse anyone in that moment. I only stated what the records showed. The chair tried to move the meeting forward. He said this was not the place for personal matters and asked me to submit concerns through normal channels. His voice was firm but careful. I said I already had. I said the corporate secretary had received formal notice through counsel. I said I was not asking for special treatment. I said I was asking for the company to acknowledge what its own governance rules required when a majority interest holder comes forward with certified proof. Company counsel opened the packet, scanned a page, and paused. He flipped to another tab. His face stayed neutral, but his jaw tightened slightly. He leaned toward the chair and spoke quietly. The chair's posture changed. He looked less like a host and more like a person managing a storm. Tara stood up then. She raised her hand and tried to speak over the process, like she could steer the room with confidence. The chair told her to sit and wait. He did not raise his voice, but he did not give her the floor. Logan moved as if he wanted to step into the aisle. A staff member approached him and guided him back to his seat area, still polite but firm. I noticed Logan's eyes scanning for friendly faces. Some people looked away. I continued. I said there was a second part to this. I said I had gone through a divorce that stripped me of my business, my property, and my role in my own life. I said that divorce timeline overlapped with actions taken around the company and around my trucking operation, which had been treated as a related asset network in practice. I said that certain decisions had been made as if my stake and my history did not exist. I said the records in the packet showed that the majority interest connected to James Holloway did exist, and that I was the lawful successor named in the controlling structure. I said the controlling structure included a trust arrangement and corporate transfer documents that had been executed long before my marriage. When I said trust, I felt a ripple move through the room. Not everyone understood it, but everyone understood it mattered. I explained in simple terms. I said my father's majority interest had been placed into a trust framework. I said the trust named a beneficiary and defined conditions for notification and recognition. I said those conditions had been met, and the trustee had executed the required steps. I said the trustee's notice and the supporting certifications were included in the packet. I did not read from the documents. I did not wave pages in the air. I let the structure speak by existing. Calm is stronger when it is supported by paper that can be checked. The chair called a short recess. He said the room would pause while counsel reviewed materials. He asked everyone to remain seated and respectful. Staff moved toward the front table, and people began whispering in low voices. I stayed where I was. During the recess, Tara turned fully toward me. She spoke without a microphone, but loud enough for people near her to hear. She said I was trying to create confusion. She said I was not part of that world anymore. She said I was only there because I could not accept losing. I did not answer her in the room. I looked at the chair and waited for procedure to resume. The more she spoke, the more she showed she believed performance could replace verification. Logan leaned toward Tara and spoke quickly. His hands moved as if he was counting options in his head. Tara's face tightened further. Her confidence was slipping, not because of emotion, but because the room was no longer hers to manage. After about 15 minutes, the chair returned to the podium with counsel and the corporate secretary. Their expressions were controlled, but the air had changed. The chair said the company was entering an emergency governance step. He said the materials presented were serious and required immediate action. He said a majority ownership claim had been presented with certified supporting records. He said counsel had reviewed the formal notice and the core documents sufficiently to confirm that the company could not ignore them. He said the company would follow its bylaws and statutory obligations, and an independent review would begin immediately. He also said something that landed like a weight. He said the board had to protect the company from unauthorized actions while the review proceeded. Then the consequences started dropping, one by one, like clean stones. The chair said the board was appointing an independent audit firm to review historical ownership records and recent transfers. He said this was effective immediately. He said any executive actions involving ownership, voting rights, or major asset movement would be paused pending review. Company counsel then stood and spoke in a measured way. He said certain authorizations would be suspended as a precaution. He did not mention Tara by name in that sentence, but his eyes went briefly toward her seat before returning to the room. The corporate secretary read a short statement about temporary restrictions on signing authority and access controls for company-linked accounts. He said the restrictions were standard under a governance review and were not optional. Tara stood again. This time her voice shook slightly as she tried to argue that she was an officer and had a right to speak. The chair told her she would have a right to speak in the proper forum, with counsel present, but not as a floor interruption. He told her to sit. 2 staff members stepped closer, still polite, but ready. Logan tried to speak next, as if he could frame the situation. The chair asked him to state his shareholder status for the record. Logan did not answer that question. He tried to talk around it. The chair repeated the question. Logan's face tightened. He sat down. Evelyn stood and requested that my status be recognized for the purpose of the review process. Counsel conferred with the chair. Then the chair said that, pending verification already underway, I would be treated as the presenting majority claimant and would receive notices and access to the formal process through counsel. I did not smile. I did not celebrate. I nodded once. The room was quiet in a heavy way now, not a quiet of boredom. A quiet of people realizing they had been watching a play, and the stage just turned into a courtroom without anyone moving chairs. The chair announced the meeting would end early due to the emergency review. He thanked attendees and asked them not to spread rumors. He said official communication would follow. People stood slowly, like they did not trust their legs. I stayed seated until most people were moving away. I watched the front table. 2 seats were already empty. A third person stood and walked off without looking at the crowd. Tara remained frozen for a moment, staring at the stage like she expected someone to fix it for her. Then her phone lit up. She looked down and read something. The color drained from her face. She tapped the screen twice, then again like she could force it to change. Logan leaned in to look at her phone. He frowned, then straightened and scanned the room. His posture had changed. He no longer looked like a man who belonged there. He looked like a man trying to locate the nearest exit that did not feel like an exit. I stood up and adjusted my badge. Evelyn stepped beside me and spoke quietly, telling me where to go next and who would meet us. I nodded and followed her toward the side hallway reserved for formal staff. As we passed the front row, I saw Tara's badge on the carpet near her chair. It must have fallen when she stood up too fast. She did not notice it. She was still staring at her phone. I walked past without stopping, calm and steady, while the ballroom behind me filled with the low sound of a story collapsing under verified history.